This is the question asked in today's skillrack daily challenge. So in the first line of our input we are given two integers. The first integer is r and the second integer is c. Here both the integers r and c are equal to 3. So we have to accept two 3 cross 3 matrix as input. So this is our first 3 cross 3 matrix. So I am highlighting this in red color, and now this is our second 3 cross 3 matrix. So I am highlighting the second 3 cross 3 matrix in blue color. So the first matrix is M1 and the second matrix is M2. And now our task is to multiply the matrix M1 and M2. And before multiplying, we have to flip the matrix M2. So the M1 matrix remains as such. So I am directly copying it and pasting it. But the M2 matrix must be flipped before multiplying M1 and M2. So when the matrix is flipped, the integers present column wise gets reversed. So the first column is 563. So after flipping the matrix, the first column would become 365. So like this, all the columns would be flipped. So now let us flip our matrix M2. So after flipping, the last row will come to the first row. So the last row of M2 is 3, 10, 7. So the first row of the new updated matrix M2 is now 3, 10, 7. And now the second row of the original matrix M2 is 6, 47, 40. So the middle row remains at the middle itself. And then finally the first row becomes the last row. So the first row is 5, 6, 31. So in the updated matrix, the last row is 5, 6, 31. So here this is our original matrix and this is our updated matrix M2. So here we can see that the first column is 563 in our original matrix, but in our updated matrix the first column is 365, and then the second column is 647 10, but in our updated it is 10 47 6, and then 31 47, and in our updated it is 7 40 31. So all the columns are reversed. So hence the matrix M2 is flipped. Now we have to multiply the matrices M1 and M2, and here we have to multiply in such a way that we are just going to multiply the integers present at the same index. So the first integer of our output would be multiplying the first integer of M1 and the first integer of M2. So the first integer of M1 is 1 and the first integer of M2 is 3. So 3 into 1 is 3. So that will be the first integer in our output. And now the second integer would be second element of M1 into second element of M2. So 3 into 10 will be 30. So that will be the second in our output. And then the third would be third of M1 and third of M2. So 5 into 7 will be 35. And then second row first column. So 8, and then from M2 6. So 8 into 6 48, and 26 into 47. So this is how we will be forming our output matrix. So we will be multiplying the matrices M1 and M2, and after multiplying that would be our output. So here we can see that the first row is 3, 30, 35, and then 48. So this, our logic is correct. So this is how we are given in the question. We have to flip the matrix M2 and then we should multiply the matrices M1 and M2. So that would be our output. But how we are going to solve this is, soon after accepting our input matrices M1 and M2, without flipping the matrix M2, we can directly solve. So what we are doing is just we are multiplying 1 with 3. So that is, we are multiplying the first row with the last row of M1, and then we are multiplying the second row with last second row of M2, and then we are multiplying the third row of M1 with last third row of M2. So that is how we are solving the problem. So without flipping the matrix itself, we can directly print our output. So similarly, in our sample input 2, here we are given two 4 cross 3 matrices input, and again when we follow the same procedure, we will be able to form the correct output matrix. Now let us see how to write a C program for this. So first I am creating two integers r and c, and in the next line I am accepting values of both the integers r and c, and then I am creating two two-dimensional arrays named M1 and M2, both of size r cross c. So we will be storing our input matrix in these integer arrays M1 and M2. So now we have to accept our first input matrix M1. So it is of size r cross c. So I am creating a nested for loop, and the first loop iterates from 0 to r and the second loop iterates from 0 to c. And in every iteration we will accept an integer and store it into the matrix M1. So this is our matrix M1, and now we should accept M2. So again I am creating a nested for loop, and in every iteration we will be accepting an integer, and now we will be storing the integers into the array M2. So this will be our M2 matrix. So now we have to print our output. Till now we have just accepted our input. Now we are going to print our output. So to print our output, again we need to traverse through the matrix. So again I am creating a nested for loop. So in every iteration of this nested for loop, we will be printing an integer, and the value of the integer will be the integer that is present in the matrix M1 at the index ij into the integer that is present at the index r minus 1 minus ij of matrix M2. And here we are including r minus 1 minus I because that would be the last. So accordingly, suppose if the value of I, so if I is at the first row, then r minus 1 minus I would be the last first row. Suppose if I is at the second row, then r minus 1 minus I would be the last second row. So we will not be changing the column, we will just be changing the row. So if you are taking an integer from the first row of M1, then we should multiply it with the last first row of M2. So that is what we are doing in r minus 1 minus I. So that is what that statement represents. So when we do like this, we get our correct output. So now let us check our program with sample test cases. So this is our sample input 1. So let us give it to our program and check our output. So this is our expected output for sample input 1, and we can see that we also get the same integers as our output. So our output is correct. And now let us check it with our sample input 2. So here we were given two 4x3 matrix as input. So this is our expected output, and here again we get the correct integers as our output. So this is the logic behind today's daily challenge. Thank you for watching.